Hello, and welcome to the Hangar Talk for May. This is a new monthly update to the channel to let you all know what's going on behind the scenes, and what you can look forward to the future. I originally wanted to get this back up on May 31st and even had it ready to go, but didn't like it in its initial setup, so I redid it. For future reference, Hangar Talks will occur at the end of each month or sometime near in the case of oddities in life, since real life does tend to get in the way a lot. So, to start with, I want to give a big thank you to everyone who's watched, commented, and subscribed recently. I started this channel thinking it was only get about 500 views and maybe 20 subscribers by the end of the month, but you have quite simply blown that expectation out of the water, as we currently sit with 43 subscribers, which is only going up each time I check. And I am just baffled by that amount, because this is a fairly niche topic, so I figured its poll would be fairly low, but to see this amount of reception and positive feedback is just heartwarming, to say the least. So, thank you to all of you. Now, to some behind-the-scenes stuff, since I'm fairly certain you guys are all curious on how I make this. Well, I get my information from Wikipedia, which is probably a surprise to some of you, but I am by no means no, actual historian. I am just a person with a deep, passionate love for aviation history, and a desire to teach it to those who aren't so familiar with it. So, I use Wikipedia to get a basis, entry-level introduction written up in Google Drive, and then I just sit down and record that introduction being the script to the aircraft, which usually pertains to being 5 minutes long, hence introduction, because I can't exactly call these, episodes on aircraft without them being 3 hours long, because there's a lot of details to specific aircraft that I've glossed over or summarized in order to not make an episode drag out or take up an inordinate amount of time. For example, I had to cut short in the P-51's video the development of the P-51D specifically, because the way North American turned the P-51B and C into the P-51D is kind of its own development story and a half, considering what they did to the damn thing. It's still kind of the same plane, but it's kind of a ship of Theseus problem. It's basically been replaced at every part, but it still looks identical, so is it really the same plane at that point? Anyway, so that covers getting information and scripting. The reason I don't do, reading books or going to museums is because I really don't have that ability. I have me, and a computer, which I will shamelessly rip off from Laserpig since it is very accurate. I am just a random person on the internet with access to the internet who wants to learn and use said internet to teach other people. So, how do I get footage and images? Well, quite simply, if you haven't guessed by this point, I use Google search for getting a lot of the images for my videos, which is why a bunch of the images you'll see are fairly common or famous ones, such as the image for the P-51's thumbnail. As for getting footage from flight simulators, I use 3 flight sims primarily. When I can, I use DCS. Haven't used it yet because I haven't had a chance to, because I've not found a scene that's applicable. I only have the P-47 for DCS, so that's probably the first time you'll see it. But you'll see it a bunch more when I get into later aircraft. IL-2 Sturmovik Great Battles, which is what I used for the P-51 and Spitfires video. And then IL-2 Sturmovik Y-Pack, which is a mod collection for IL-2 Sturmovik 1946 from 2006. Which has the largest variety of aircraft that you can actually control and fly around with that I've seen in, forever. Even War Thunder doesn't hold a candle to IL-2. So, that's what I use for footage. Usually I just go into those, make a quick, mission, and then record it. That's what I did for the Devastator video, is I made a small mission for both the Coral Sea battle and then a custom battle for the Battle of Midway scene, with all the Devastators getting shot down by the fleet in the foreground. And with all of that said, the actual time to create all of these videos is about 2 to 3 days from, initial production of the script to actually finishing and uploading to YouTube. These do not take a long time, which is what I wanted to do specifically, so it didn't become a slog and I suffered burnout. That way, in case, I, want to get a bunch of videos out really quickly, it doesn't take that much effort, and I can just turn them out when I need to, when I'm able to, etc. And I'm not having to slog an entire week like I did originally to produce videos, because originally, the biggest time sink for making the videos was not the script, because the script usually took about a solid day. It was finding suitable footage and music, which should not be that difficult, but was, because when I originally started this series, I wanted to use 100% authentic footage, like footage taken at the time, or in worst case scenario, use airshow footage, and also have background music that kind of set a low classy theme, muted trumpets and jazz, that sort of thing. Music didn't work out because copyright is a bitch, and the footage didn't work out because all of the good footage is not under public domain, and you have to pay for. And well, again, I am just me with a computer. I do not have money. Though if this ever becomes popular enough, I may start a Patreon or a Ko-fi or something. And the last question that I have set up for this Hangar Talk is why I make these videos in the first place and why I'm so passionate about this topic. Well, to do that, we have to kind of dive into my family history a little bit. See, my great-grandfather was a photo reconnaissance pilot in World War II. He flew over Nazi-occupied Italy in a P-38 called the Nola Ruth and got shot down twice. So, imagine my surprise when I hear, against all statistical probability, that I A, exist, and B, have a really cool grandpa who flew P-38s over Nazi-occupied Italy. Not only that, photo reconnaissance is just extra levels of bravery and awesomeness, because, well, in photo reconnaissance, you're getting shot at and you don't get to shoot back because you've got cameras instead of guns. And I could do an entire episode on my great-grandpa, and I might, just maybe, might do a special episode for the P-38 or something, since it's such an important plane to both me and my family at large. But that wasn't what initially spawned my love of aviation and aircraft. That actually belongs to my dad, who worked and created some combat flight sims, most notably IL-2 Stromovic 1946. That's how I got into combat flight sims when I was really young, was him getting me a copy of IL-2 and putting it on my computer for me to enjoy. Oh, I crashed a lot and, got shot down all the time, but I was having a blast. I was like 5. I didn't care. But later on in life, when I realized this and realized, how special of a place aircraft and planes in general had in my family, I began to get more and more invested in aircraft and learn more and more about it. When I was in high school, there was a museum of flight that I could go to nearby, and I would go over there almost daily to just walk around and look at all of the aircraft, because they had an exhibit for both World War I, World War II, Vietnam, and even some Korean aircraft. And it was just amazing to walk around and actually see the things that flew and fought in person. And, from that burden of love, I wanted to start teaching people about this amazing topic. And that's kind of what spurred to the aerodrome. Well, sort of. As the first episode of the aerodrome was actually not made for the aerodrome, but instead for a school project. The entire reason I made a video on the TBD Devastator was a school project where we were going over history of aircraft, and one of the things we were covering was, aircraft to put in a museum, and I said the TBD Devastator because when I read into it, while publicly it is seen as a pretty bad aircraft that was way out of date and just kind of a flying coffin, in context, it was actually a fairly impressive piece of technology for its time, and a perfect example of the aviation innovation scene of the mid-1930s, which I even say so in my original video, which you can see on this channel. And when I made that original video, it was like a 1 minute, just, this is the plane, this is what it did, this is why it's seen, and why I want it to be in a museum. And apparently that got enough people's attention to warrant 100 views, which at the time was astronomical. So I was like, you know what, screw it, I'll make a new video on this. And so I made the 5-minute guide we all know today for the Devastator. And on my original channel, Lecogular the Mountain Man, that exploded to 30,000 views randomly. I was just sitting in my home on my computer when I realized, hey, why do I have a bunch of YouTube notifications? Oh my god, there are 30,000 people who have watched this random episode. And so I started making the aerodrome. Made it on my old YouTube channel, Lecogular the Mountain Man's links in the bio of this channel. And when I realized the problems I was running into, I paused, made that update video on my old channel, and then made this, and then restarted. Hence why the redos of all of the older episodes. And that's how the aerodrome has come to life. And now that we're at the 10-minute mark, I think I will stop talking and leave you at that. You can expect the P40 video and the beginning of Season 1 Wild Blue Yonder dedicated to the U.S. Air Force sometime this week. Or next week, actually. I'm probably going to take this weekend off and just get some me time. But I will definitely have the P40 up by next Wednesday the latest. Shouldn't take too long. So with that, I bid you all adieu.